She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just signed. Some endings are written in silence, but some silences change everything. The rain tapped softly against the window of the small law office on 3rd Street. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and coffee that had been sitting too long. A clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking each second with quiet indifference. Elena Morgan sat with her hands folded on the mahogany table, her back straight, her face calm. Across from her, her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, drummed his fingers impatiently on the armrest of his chair. His lawyer shuffled papers, clearing his throat every few moments, as if the silence made him uncomfortable. "Mrs. Morgan," the lawyer said gently, sliding the final document across the table. "If you'd like more time to review—" "I don't need more time," Elena said quietly. Her voice was soft, but there was something in it that made everyone pause. Not anger, not sadness, just finality. She picked up the pen. It felt heavier than it should have. For a moment she stared at the line where her signature would go. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of trying, of hoping, of believing that love could survive neglect, that patience could outlast indifference. But hope has a limit. Even hers. She signed her name in smooth, careful strokes. Marcus didn't even look at her. He was already checking his phone, his jaw tight with irritation, as if this was just another appointment keeping him from something more important. Finally, he muttered under his breath. Elena set the pen down gently and stood. She picked up her purse, a simple leather bag she'd had since before they were married, and walked toward the door. "Elena," Marcus said, his tone casual, dismissive. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You'll be fine. You'll figure things out." She paused at the door but didn't turn around. "I already have," she said softly, and then she left. 3 months earlier, Elena had always been the kind of woman who didn't demand attention. She moved through the world quietly, with a kind of grace that came from self-possession rather than confidence. She worked as a senior editor at a mid-sized publishing house, the kind of job where your contributions mattered but your name rarely appeared on anything. She was good at her work, very good, but she never boasted, never fought for recognition. At home, things were different. Or rather, they had stopped being anything at all. Marcus was a financial consultant who worked 80-hour weeks and measured success in numbers and deals closed. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing Elena as a partner and started seeing her as furniture. Present, functional, but unnoticed. Dinners were eaten in silence, if they ate together at all. Conversations were transactional. Anniversaries were forgotten. And then came the night that changed everything. Elena had come home early, carrying a small bakery box with a slice of lemon cake, Marcus's favorite because she'd remembered it was the anniversary of the day they'd first met. Not their wedding anniversary, just the day they'd met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same novel. She walked into the apartment and heard laughter. A woman's laughter. She found Marcus in the living room, with a colleague. Nothing inappropriate was happening. They were just talking, working on some presentation, but it was the way he looked at this other woman, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he smiled. Elena hadn't seen him smile like that in years. She set the cake down on the kitchen counter without saying a word, and went to the bedroom. That night, lying in the dark, she realized something that felt both devastating and liberating. She had disappeared from her own marriage, not because Marcus had pushed her away, but because she had made herself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the shrinking space he left for her. The next morning, she contacted a lawyer. The quiet months.
Elena didn't tell Marcus right away. Instead, she did something she hadn't done in years.
She focused on herself. She started going to the gym in the mornings before work. Not to change how she looked, but to remember that her body was hers, that she was capable of strength. She reconnected with old friends, women she'd lost touch with because she'd been too busy trying to save a marriage that didn't want saving. And she worked, not just at her job, but on a manuscript she'd been writing in secret for 3 years, a novel about second chances and finding yourself after losing everything. One afternoon, her boss, Catherine, called her into the office. "Elena, I'm going to be direct with you," Catherine said, leaning back in her chair. "You've been one of the best editors I've ever worked with, but lately, you've been extraordinary." "What changed?" Elena smiled softly. "I stopped waiting for permission to matter." Catherine studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because I'm promoting you. Senior executive editor, and I want you to consider something else." She slid a business card across the desk. "A friend of mine runs a boutique publishing house in London. She's looking for someone to head their new literary division. I recommended you." Elena looked at the card, her heart beating faster. "Think about it," Catherine said. "You deserve to be somewhere that sees you." The divorce. When Elena finally told Marcus she wanted a divorce, he seemed almost relieved. If that's what you want, he said, barely looking up from his laptop. She didn't ask for much in the settlement. She didn't want the apartment, it had never felt like home anyway. She didn't want his money or his things. She just wanted her freedom. Marcus's lawyer tried to drag things out, to complicate matters, but Elena's lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Grace, cut through it all. My client is being more than fair, Grace said firmly. Unless you'd like us to start examining the full financial picture, I suggest we settle this quickly. They settled. And now, 3 months later, Elena sat in that quiet office and signed her name. She walked out into the rain, tilted her face toward the sky, and breathed. The message. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Elena was packing her apartment. She'd accepted the job in London and was leaving in a month. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Ms. Morgan, my name is James Chen. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Margaret Whitfield. Please call me at your earliest convenience. It's regarding an inheritance. Elena frowned. Margaret Whitfield. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. She called the number. Miss Morgan, the lawyer said warmly. Thank you for calling. I know this must be confusing. Margaret Whitfield was your mother's cousin. You met her once when you were about 10 years old. Elena's breath caught. She had a faint memory, a tall, elegant woman with kind eyes who had come to her mother's funeral and sat with Elena for hours just holding her hand. She passed away 6 months ago. The lawyer continued. And she left you something in her will. What? What did she leave me? Quite a bit, actually. Miss Whitfield was a successful investor and philanthropist. She never married, never had children, but she remembered you. She followed your career, your life, and she was very specific in her will. He paused. Miss Morgan, you've inherited approximately $47 million, a property portfolio and controlling shares in several companies. Elena sat down slowly, her mind reeling. There's one condition, the lawyer added. She requested that you use part of the inheritance to establish a foundation supporting women in the arts and publishing. Beyond that, everything is yours. The bank. 4 weeks later, Elena was supposed to attend the annual Publishing Industry Awards, a black tie event. She'd been invited to every year, but had never attended. Marcus had always found excuses why they couldn't go. This year, she was going, not because she wanted to make a statement, but because she'd been nominated for an award for mentoring emerging writers, something she'd been doing quietly for years. She chose a simple, elegant navy gown. No jewelry except for a pair of pearl earrings that had been her mother's. Her hair was pulled back softly, her makeup minimal. She looked like herself. Finally, as she was about to call a car, her phone rang. It was James Chen, the lawyer. Miss Morgan, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I took the liberty of arranging transportation for you this evening. Miss Whitfield's estate includes a private jet and car service. I thought you might appreciate using them. Elena hesitated, then smiled. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That's very kind. The arrival. The banquet was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the most prestigious venue in the city. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, lined with photographers and reporters. Marcus would be there. Elena knew that. He'd sponsored one of the award categories this year, probably to impress clients. As the usual parade of limousines pulled up, flashbulbs popping, someone pointed to the sky. A sleek private jet was making its final approach to the nearby executive airport. 15 minutes later, a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the red carpet. The photographers, expecting another mid-level executive, barely looked up until the door opened. Elena stepped out, graceful and unhurried. The photographers' cameras went wild. Who is that? Wait, that's Elena Morgan, the editor who just got promoted to that London position. She's the one who inherited the Whitfield fortune. Inside the venue, word spread like wildfire. People whispered. Phones came out. Messages were sent. In the main ballroom, Marcus was networking with clients when his colleague nudged him. Marcus, isn't that your wife? Ex-wife, Marcus corrected automatically. Then he turned. Elena was walking through the ballroom, calm and composed, greeting colleagues and friends. She looked radiant, not because of the dress or the circumstances, but because she looked free. Marcus's face went pale, then red. He excused himself and walked over to her, his jaw tight. Elena, he said, his voice low and controlled. We need to talk. She turned to him with a polite smile. Hello, Marcus. Congratulations on your sponsorship. That's very generous of you. What's going on? Everyone's saying you inherited millions, that you're moving to London. Why didn't you tell me? We're divorced, Marcus. My life isn't your concern anymore. His eyes flashed. You knew during the settlement. You knew about this money, didn't you? You deceived me. Alina's expression didn't change. I received notification about the inheritance 2 weeks after we finalized the divorce. But even if I had known earlier, it wouldn't have changed anything. I didn't want your money, and I didn't want you to want mine. This is insane. We could have. No, Marcus. We couldn't have. Because you never saw me. Not really. And I spent years making myself invisible trying to earn something you were never going to give me. So this is what? Some kind of revenge? Elena shook her head slowly. No, this is me choosing to be visible, to matter, to myself. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus. I really do. But I finally found what I was looking for. And it was never going to be in someone else's approval. The award. Later that evening, Elena won the Mentorship Award. As she stood on stage, looking out at the hundreds of faces, she thought about all the years she'd spent believing that her worth was measured by how much space she took up in someone else's life. Thank you, she said into the microphone, her voice steady. I want to dedicate this award to every person who has ever felt invisible, who has made themselves smaller to fit into someone else's world. You don't have to disappear to deserve love. You don't have to shrink to belong. She paused, her eyes bright. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take up space, to be seen, to matter. Not because someone finally notices you, but because you finally notice yourself. The applause was thunderous. 6 months later, Elena stood in her new office in London, looking out over the city. The literary division she'd been hired to lead was thriving. The foundation she'd established in Margaret Whitfield's name had already awarded its first round of grants to women writers and artists. She received a letter one afternoon forwarded from her old address. It was from Marcus. She almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. Elena, I don't expect you to respond to this. I'm not even sure why I'm writing it. I saw an article about your foundation, about the work you're doing, and I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I never knew you. Not really. I was so focused on what I thought success looked like, that I never stopped to see what actually mattered. You deserved better. You deserved to be seen. I'm sorry I was too blind to do that. I hope you're happy. I really do, Marcus. Elena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel vindication. She felt peaceful. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't wait for someone else to value you. You have to value yourself first. The moral: some people will never see your worth. They'll overlook you, dismiss you, take you for granted. And you can spend your whole life trying to prove yourself to them. Trying to be enough for someone who has already decided you're not. Or you can choose to see yourself, to honor your own voice, to take up space, to matter not because someone finally notices but because you refuse to be invisible anymore. Elena didn't need a billionaire's jet or a fortune to find her worth. She found it the moment she stopped waiting for permission to value herself. And sometimes the quietest ending is actually the most powerful beginning.